Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will continue with the fourth part of the series. How does money and our global economic cycle work? It starts right after the intro. Stay tuned.
Insights for the informed investor.
The Kitchin cycle. The first theory is the Kitchin cycle. If you have never had anything to do with the economy, this cycle will mean nothing to you. The Kitchin cycle, named after the British economist Joseph Kitchin, is an economic theory explanation for short-term economic cycles that span a period of about 3 to 5 years. These cycles are often referred to as stock cycles or inventory cycles, as they are closely linked to fluctuations in companies' inventories and their investment behavior in relation to these inventories. At the heart of the Kitchin cycle theory is the observation that companies tend to increase their inventories in times of economic expansion. This increase in inventory is in anticipation of a continuously growing demand for their products. Companies therefore invest more in production and warehousing in order to be able to deliver at all times and quickly meet potential market demand. This leads to a temporary economic upswing, characterized by higher production rates and increased economic activity. However, this phase of expansion eventually reaches a point where actual market demand can no longer keep pace with companies' optimistic expectations. Inventories begin to pile up as the goods produced are not sold to the extent expected. In this phase, companies take measures to correct their inventories. They reduce their production volumes and stop or slow down further investment in warehousing. This reduction in production activities leads to an economic downturn. Another important factor influencing the Kitchin cycle is the availability and cost of credit. In periods of low interest rates and easy availability of credit, companies are more willing to invest in inventories and production, which increases expansion. However, rising interest rates and more restrictive lending can dampen companies' willingness to invest and accelerate economic contraction. In the contraction phase, when companies reduce their inventories, demand for raw materials and intermediate products falls, which in turn leads to a reduction in industrial activity. This leads to a slowdown in the economy as a whole. Only when inventories are reduced to a low level and market demand begins to rise again do companies see the need to replenish their stocks. This change initiates a new phase of expansion, and the cycle starts all over again. The Kitchin cycle thus illustrates how short, recurring fluctuations in the economy, influenced by inventory strategies and credit conditions, shape the larger economic picture. Such cycles are an indispensable part of understanding economic dynamics and show how micro-decisions at the firm level can have macroeconomic effects. The Juglar cycle. The Juglar cycle, named after the French economist Clément Juglar, describes medium-term economic cycles with a duration of around 7 to 11 years. According to Juglar's findings, these cycles are primarily characterized by investment decisions and changes in companies' capital expenditure. The theory of the Juglar cycle focuses on the fluctuations in investment activity that are influenced by changing economic conditions and expectations. In the expansion phase of a Juglar cycle, companies see good opportunities to invest in production facilities, machinery, and other durable goods in times of economic growth. These investments are spurred on by a positive economic outlook and high demand for goods and services. Increased demand leads to higher profits, which in turn increases the willingness and ability of companies to invest in new projects. This process reinforces economic expansion, as new investments lead to additional production capacity and increased economic activity. Over time, however, this phase of expansion begins to slow down. One reason for this is that the markets become saturated and capacity utilization reaches a high level. Returns on new investments begin to fall as the additional production capacity can no longer be utilized as profitably. In addition, interest rates often rise during this phase as the demand for credit increases, and central banks may take action against signs of overheating in the economy. These higher financing costs make investments less attractive and lead companies to reduce their investment spending. This reduction in investment activity triggers the contraction phase in the Juglar cycle. The decline in investment leads to a fall in production activity, which in turn results in a reduction in employment and consumption. This downward spiral is intensified by the falling demand for capital goods, which particularly affects those industries that specialize in the production of machinery and equipment. The contraction phase continues until the excess capacity has been reduced and the economy has stabilized. At the low point of the cycle, when investment activity has reached its lowest level and the economy is stagnating, companies gradually start to invest in new projects again. This often happens in conjunction with falling interest rates and improved economic conditions. The resulting new investments mark the start of a new phase of expansion, and the cycle begins again. The Juglar cycle thus illustrates the importance of investment activity and financing costs for economic development. It shows how changes in expectations and economic conditions can lead to recurring fluctuations in economic activity. These cycles are longer term than the Kitchin cycles and offer insights into the medium-term dynamics that characterize economic boom and bust phases. The Kuznets cycle. The Kuznets cycle, named after the Russian-American economist Simon Kuznets, describes long-term economic cycles with a duration of around 15 to 25 years. These cycles are also referred to as construction boom cycles, as they are closely linked to fluctuations in the construction industry and the associated investments in infrastructure and residential buildings. Kuznets discovered these cycles by analyzing extensive data on construction activity, population growth, and economic development. At the heart of the Kuznets cycle theory is the observation that periods of intense construction activity are often driven by long-term economic and demographic trends. At the beginning of such a cycle, strong population growth or significant urbanization can generate increased demand for housing and infrastructure. This leads to an increase in construction investment as both private and public sectors respond to meet the growing needs of the population. Increased construction activity entails a variety of economic activities, including the production of construction materials, the creation of jobs, and the promotion of services related to the construction sector. During this phase of expansion in a Kuznets cycle, the economy is experiencing strong growth, driven by increased demand for construction projects and related economic activity. This leads to a general economic upswing, which is noticeable in various sectors. However, even this phase eventually reaches a point where construction activity peaks. This can be caused by market saturation or more difficult financing conditions. For example, when rising interest rates increase the cost of construction projects. When construction activity slows down, the economy enters the contraction phase of the Kuznets cycle. The decline in construction investment leads to a reduction in demand for building materials and labor, which has a negative impact on the economy. This downturn can be characterized by a general reduction in economic activity and falling employment in the construction sector. The phase of contraction continues until the excess capacity in the construction sector has been reduced and the economy has adapted to the new conditions. After a phase of economic stagnation or slight recovery, a new wave of expansion can begin, often triggered by new demographic trends or technological innovations that stimulate renewed demand for construction investment. This marks the beginning of a new Kuznets cycle, and the economic upturn picks up speed again. The Kuznets cycle illustrates the long-term economic fluctuations caused by fundamental changes in the population and investments in infrastructure. These cycles are longer term than the Kitchin and Juglar cycles and offer insights into the structural developments that shape the economic landscape over decades. Kuznets' work emphasizes the importance of the construction sector as a driver of long-term economic change and shows how demographic and infrastructural factors are closely linked. The Kondratieff cycle. The Kondratieff cycle, named after the Russian economist Nikolai Kondratieff, describes very long-term economic cycles with a duration of around 40 to 60 years. These cycles, also known as long waves, are characterized by profound technological and economic upheavals that change entire economic structures. Kondratieff identified several such cycles in modern economic history, with each wave characterized by significant technological innovations and their far-reaching economic impact. The Kondratieff cycle typically begins with a phase of innovation in which new technologies or fundamental scientific discoveries emerge. These innovations have the potential to fundamentally change production methods and create new industries. An example of this is the Industrial Revolution, which brought about a massive increase in productivity and profound social change through the introduction of steam power and mechanical looms. The innovation phase is followed by a phase of economic boom in which the new technologies are widely used. This spread leads to considerable economic growth as new industries are created and existing sectors are revolutionized. Increased productivity and the creation of new jobs drive the economic upturn. During this phase, companies invest heavily in the new technologies, leading to increased demand for capital and labor. After this boom phase, the economy enters a phase of saturation. The new technologies are widely used, and their initial productivity gains begin to stagnate. Competition increases, and the profits from the new technologies decrease. Companies reduce their investments as the expected returns decrease. This phase is often characterized by overproduction, falling profits, and rising unemployment. The next phase is the recession or depression, in which economic activity declines significantly. Companies have to restructure and many go bankrupt. Unemployment reaches high levels, and economic uncertainty increases. This phase can last several years and is often characterized by social and political unrest, as the effects of the economic slowdown are far-reaching. Finally, at the low point of the cycle, a recovery phase begins, often triggered by the development and introduction of new technologies that lay the foundations for the next Kondratieff cycle. These new innovations open up new economic opportunities and drive growth once again. Examples of such recovery phases are the introduction of electricity and the automobile in the early 20th century, or information technology, and the Internet in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The Kondratieff cycle illustrates the profound and long-lasting impact of technological innovations on economic development. These long waves show how fundamental changes in technology and production methods can transform the entire economy over decades. Kondratieff's theory offers valuable insights into the structural changes and long-term trends that shape economic dynamics. If you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to like it. Subscribe to my channel and activate the bell to give the channel added value and support my channel for free. The phases of the cycle. Now that you have learned about the various theories in detail, the 4 major phases will be described. You will then also understand why it is not so bad if the economy goes through one phase or another. Once you have understood these phases, you can use them again and again to visualize an economic cycle. The upswing. The first phase in every economic cycle is the upswing phase. In this phase, employment in the country increases, and therefore the gross national product also grows. It should be noted that an upswing is usually preceded by a crisis. This crisis has now been overcome and the economy is growing again, and, over time, more and more people have confidence in the economy. The numerous cost savings that were made during the last recession are now making themselves felt again. The banks are also cautiously raising interest rates. This is to protect against possible inflation. The slow increase in interest rates also ensures that the economy can grow slowly. The boom. The upswing is usually followed by the boom. During this phase, interest rates are at a high level, and share prices reach record highs. It is advisable not to buy shares during this phase. The reason for this is that companies will lose value again over time. As soon as a company's share value has reached a low point, this would be the ideal time to buy shares. However, forecasts in the boom phase are very optimistic, which leads to more and more investors buying shares. After a certain time, the first profit warnings appear in the news. If some shares are valued too highly at this point, you could also sell them. The downturn. Share sales accelerate and overall economic demand falls. People have become frightened after initial losses. It is precisely in such a phase that you should dispose of your shares that have performed well. If you wait too long, you will usually end up selling at the wrong time. You should avoid this at all costs, and therefore make sure from the outset that you get rid of the shares at a certain point in time. The recession. Last but not least, a recession occurs. Sentiment has reached a real low. The stock market falls completely, and the gross domestic product, which is an economic indicator, has also fallen. Numerous companies are cutting staff, which in turn is reflected in the labor market. In addition, the number of bankruptcies is growing, and there is no longer any enthusiasm for shares. Another important aspect is that central bank interest rates are falling and may continue to fall until they have bottomed out. If you are familiar with an economic cycle, you should buy shares again during this phase. This is because these shares will perform well again, allowing you to sleep on profits. Every year again. During the last financial crisis, many people panicked. However, this reaction is not absolutely necessary if you have studied the phases of an economic cycle in detail. It is inevitable that there will always be recessions. In such times, it is crucial to take prudent and well-thought-out measures. Experienced and successful investors often use recessions as buying opportunities, as they know that every crisis is followed by a phase of economic recovery. These investors keep a cool head in turbulent times and make decisions based on rational thought rather than fear or panic. If you panic, you've lost from the start. Instead, you should try to analyze the current economic cycle soberly and objectively. By gaining a deep understanding of economic relationships and cycles, you can develop strategies that will ensure your long-term success. A systematic approach based on sound knowledge and rational decision-making will help you to take the right steps even in difficult economic times. In this way, you can ensure that you not only survive the crises, but also emerge from them stronger. In addition to the typical economic cycles, you should also be prepared for extreme economic events, such as hyperinflation and currency reforms. Hyperinflation, extremely high and usually out-of-control inflation, can drastically reduce the value of savings and income. In such scenarios, it is important to invest in valuable assets, such as real estate, precious metals, or inflation-linked bonds that can better retain their value. Currency reforms, where an existing currency is replaced by a new one, can also cause significant economic upheaval. Such reforms are often undertaken to stop hyperinflation or restore confidence in the currency. Here, too, it is important to remain flexible and informed in order to make the necessary adjustments in good time. By being fully prepared and understanding both normal economic cycles and extreme economic events, you can build a robust and adaptable financial system. This knowledge will help you make informed decisions in both times of crisis and periods of growth. The economic forecast. What can we learn from the past? Many people underestimate how strongly the economy is linked to historical events. What has happened in the past will repeat itself in a similar form. It is therefore almost certain that phases of recession will occur again in the future. Admittedly, conditions are different in some respects in the present, particularly due to numerous innovations. Today, we are seeing significant advances in areas such as environmental technology, autonomous driving, and comprehensive healthcare systems. There are also groundbreaking developments in biotechnology that have the potential to fundamentally change the economy. However, these trends not only bring opportunities, but also economic risks. Any new technology or system can be susceptible to market volatility, regulatory challenges, and social acceptance issues. An awareness of these risks is crucial in order to prepare for potential economic turbulence. Another important aspect of the modern economy is human capital. At a time when knowledge and individual skills are becoming increasingly important, human capital is the key to achieving economic success. The economy is increasingly focusing on the individual and the knowledge that a person has acquired over time. This shift towards a knowledge-based economy means that companies and economies that invest in education and training are better equipped for the future. Taking these aspects into account, economic developments remain dynamic and open, but the basic economic cycle will always repeat itself. Knowledge of these cycles and the ability to react flexibly to changes are crucial for long-term economic success. By learning from the past and understanding current trends, we can be better prepared to meet the challenges of the future. This was the fourth part of the series. How does money and our global economic cycle work? I hope you enjoyed the video, so I would be very happy if you give me a like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. That way you won't miss any more videos from me and you'll be informed immediately when a new video is published. Thank you for watching the whole video and see you soon.